ceremonies, Nathan Cassar. Well, welcome back to an electrifying episode of the Justice Plan TV and podcast show, where we explore the fascinating world of entertainment and creativity that makes your special day truly unforgettable. I'm your host, as always, Nathan Cassar, and today we have a very special guest who's guaranteed to leave you questioning everything you know about reality. Joining us is Xavier Crow, an international magician, mentalist, and speaker known for his mind-bending fusion of magic, psychology, and illusion. Now, for the past 18 years, Xavier has been mesmerizing audiences across Europe, Australia, and New Zealand with his mastery of sleight of hand, mind reading, and psychological manipulation. Whether performing at private events or grand stages, Xavier blurs the lines between reality and deception, creating experiences that are as immersive as they are seemingly impossible. His performances are a masterclass in misdirection, charisma, and showmanship, leaving spectators in awe and disbelief. But don't just make my word for it. Xavier has a story that proves just how deep his mastery magic goes. Imagine being at a private event in Paris where a billionaire guest challenges him to guess the serial number on a €50 bill. The result? Well, it's a story that still has this billionaire convinced Xavier hacked his bank account. Spoiler alert, it wasn't magic. It was simply psychology, misdirection, and a lot of planning. Now, today we'll dive deep into the psychology behind illusion, Xavier's experiences performing worldwide, the science of mind reading, and even some of the wildest audience reactions he's encountered. If you've ever wondered what happens behind the scenes of a magic trick or how to influence perception, you're in for a treat. And if you're looking for something that is going to absolutely spice up your special day, this is the episode not to skip. Xavier, welcome to the show. How are you doing, brother?
I'm great. Thank you for that amazing introduction.
Oh, well, you're very kind. You know me. I love a power duo on stage where myself. I can set the scene for you, get the audience riled up for you, and then you just absolutely knock them dead with all of your fantastic illusions and sleight of hand mastery. It's such a unique skill. The one thing that I'm really curious to know before we jump right into some other fascinating stuff. It's just why do you do this? Like, what makes you get up every day and want to trick everybody around you?
Why do I do it? That's a really interesting question. Most people don't ask me why I do magic. They ask me how I do magic. So that's kind of fun. Since I was a kid, I absolutely loved doing magic. So when I was really young, there was always an uncle doing a card trick or someone around doing something, vanishing something, a piece of paper or a coin from behind my ear. But as I grew older, I didn't just want to know how a trick was done. What I actually wanted to know was how I could do it. So it wasn't just like, tell me how you did it. It was more like, tell me how I can do it. I want to do what you just did because not only did I like it, I want to show it to other people. So my vision was very different from other kids just saying, how did you do that? I was like, teach me to do it. So, when I think about my life, I've tried to do many different things in my life, and I've always come back to the stage. I love performing. I love sharing my love of something with an audience, and I love the energy I receive from being able to give them such an amazing experience. So
I love when you talk about this story because I know that we've spoken online when we first met a number of months back, and you told your story, and then I shared mine, and it's so funny how yours and I's are so well aligned and almost similar in the sense we've had very similar circumstances. Seeing other people do this kind of mastery of stage performance, in my case, speaking, in your case, illusion and magic, and it's like, the end goal is, how do I then go? We both thought, how do we take that someone else can do and do it better and make everyone feel like happy and excited and everything from the result of it? I think that's just such a authentic way to come into what now, as you say, has been an 18-year career across international borders until right back here in Australia, where you are bringing your signature flavor to the wedding market, to the corporate market, and everything else in between. I absolutely love your origin story, and it's obviously everything that you do when it comes to the psychology and illusion, blending it all together is truly mind-bending. Can you explain the psychology of this direction a little bit and how these techniques sort of shape the magic that we see in your performances?
Yeah, so as a magician, I spent many years learning how to direct, influence, persuade, and manipulate perceptions of audiences. And later on in my experience, so after say 10 years of doing purely magic shows, I came across hypnosis, which was it was an angle for me to learn more about the art of talking effectively, right? So hypnosis is purely communication, and it's such effective communication that we can do change with it. Now, I learned hypnosis as hypnotherapy to start with because I was fascinated in the mind and what I could do to first change my own mind, my beliefs, my limiting beliefs, etc. But as I moved on, I realized I actually preferred performing. So I started performing on stage as a hypnotist. I had a lot more fun with that. And through that experience, I got into different fields of psychology like neurolinguistic programming, human behavioral psychology, things like that. I read all the books I could get my hands on. And I realized those techniques made me a better performer. It wasn't just that I could persuade and deceive and entertain my audience better. I could actually communicate really deeply to my audience, which builds the connection that I'm looking for when I'm performing. And it wasn't until the pandemic came and all my gigs kind of ended that I put together a virtual show. And instead of doing magic, because magic on a screen feels a little bit impersonal, I did a virtual mind reading show. So I put together all my mentalism effects that I'd learned over the years, plus new ones. And I put together a mind reading show to do virtually. And I got such good responses from it. I didn't need the same props. I didn't need people to be right next to me in the room. I didn't need to, to have anything physical. It was all in the head. And because of that, I actually stuck with the mentalism. And I stepped away from magic slightly. It's still magical, but I focus more on mentalism now. As you can see, I give myself the title, the mentalist now, because there's something really magical about doing things inside people's heads rather than just in front of their eyes.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. I mean, I've seen my fair share of magicians and mentalists and hypnotists when I was working on cruise ships, and certainly, I'm definitely not in that camp of people that says, "Oh, it's all the same." Like, I know it's absolutely not. There is definitely a different side of skills, and I can appreciate that you've evolved your craft over time, which any good performer should. I'm curious as to also, in terms of that evolution of sorts, how you've adapted to different audiences, because you've performed in Europe, Australia, New Zealand. How have different, and of course, I'm sure, in front of 40 plus nationalities in your audiences, how have different cultures react to the illusions that you perform in front of them? And is there something uniquely perhaps powerful about a universal appeal of illusion in of itself?
Yeah. So every audience is different. That's 100% true. And I've learned from traveling that all the cultures that you interact with, you must learn a little bit about the culture in order to communicate with them better. For example, in Japan, strong eye contact is considered intimidating and even aggressive from time to time, unless you're personal. Whereas in the West, in Australia or New Zealand, for example, strong eye contact shows confidence and authority. So if I go to a country where eye contact is considered offensive or aggressive, and I maintain eye contact feeling like I'm trying to show confidence, I'm going to alienate my audience. So it's always an idea for me to have a look at a brief history, learn a little bit about a culture before I go there. One thing that is universal, however, is everybody in the world loves to be entertained. There's not a country I've been to where they don't love to be entertained. It's all a matter of what kind of entertainment they prefer and how you deliver it. So living in Finland, I lived there for most of the pandemic, actually, for the whole of the pandemic. And Finnish people are very reserved in their expressions. So I might be on stage creating some incredibly unforgettable scenario, and usually I get a thunderous applause and I'll get dead silence. Now, it's not that they didn't like it. It's that they applaud on the inside, because after the show, they'll come and they'll individually shake my hand. And the thought I always had in my head was, why didn't you tell me while you were seated in the crowd? I wanted to hear some feedback. So I had to learn that I trust my own abilities. If I trust what I'm delivering is highly valuable, it doesn't really matter how the audience responds. I know my level, I know my value, I know my skill set. And I think self-belief is the thing that I can take to every country. I know what I do is really good, and I know people are gonna love it. And I just have to trust that however they respond is the way they respond.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Knowing your worth is 100% essential when you're a performer, particularly at the grade of which you're now currently performing. We've been invited to all these different kinds of audiences and stages. Speaking of one, obviously, one specific stage for our people listening is obviously the wedding stage, in the sense that, for a wedding, there's sometimes you may be invited to do like a stage show, which would be, say, 20, 30-minute performance, whatever you negotiate. And then there'll be the alternative, which is the table illusions, where you'll roam around the entire night and perform in that way. Dual question: one, do you consider your audience and the culture and everything else before the show takes place, just as you would for any other stage? And then two, what is it that how does a wedding audience differ compared to all the other stages that you perform at?
Yeah, there's a couple of good questions. So firstly, I'm always considering my audience. One thing I have to keep in the back of my mind is, if it's not for my audience, I don't have a show. No matter how much I perform in front of a mirror, if I don't have an audience, I'm not an entertainer yet.
Mm.
So my audience is more important than anything else. The things that I usually pay the most attention to is using language that is understandable. So in different countries, I'm Australian, and I know that I can shorten my sentences, or I can use slang. But when I was in Europe, I was cutting out unnecessary words just to make sure that all my information was very clear and very concise. I actually became a better speaker because I was practicing removing filler words. Some people don't even realize I'm Australian when they hear me speak, because my English is clear and concise. So that's a positive. So being clear and concise is definitely one of the first things. I also avoid profanity. I don't swear. I don't use cheap humor. I had a mentor when I was young, and he used to love swearing, and he considered himself a comic magician. And I realized most of the laughs that he got in his show were when he was swearing or making fun of somebody. And there was something that was a little bit, for me, it was a little bit off-putting. I didn't like it. I didn't want that to be me. So I cut out all of the banter that caused me to make fun of somebody. Rather, I just make fun of myself and let everyone laugh at me, because that's more safe. And I took out all the swearing. So I never had to worry about, oh, who's in the audience? Did I say the wrong thing? So the two things I focus on are clean material, funny without, and no swearing. And most audiences in the world really receive magic is universal. So most people can understand what's going on as long as I'm communicating clearly.
No, I think it's a
second
great
question, you said
mandate
something
to
about
have for
weddings.
yourself in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And the second question about weddings, I love performing at weddings. Corporate events are great, and there's always a mixed crowd. It's a higher end function, so people are usually dressed quite well, and they're of a high caliber. And I also find the same thing at weddings. People are there to celebrate love, romance, and a lifelong union. And everyone's dressed really nice. People are looking good. They're feeling good. There's a few drinks going around. There's dancing. I think the idea of being at a wedding is always fun, because they're already there to have a good time. In fact, they're some of the most receptive audiences at weddings, because I do find at weddings quite often there are very specific kinds of entertainment that people use as a template. It's always the same few things, and very often it's a band, a DJ, perhaps a singer, and of course there's always an MC. That's the most important part. Your job is to keep things moving. But very, very rarely do I see weddings that think outside the box and choose entertainment that's unusual. So I'll go to a lot of weddings where I'll be the entertainer, and I'll have a lot of responses of people saying, "Wow, I can't believe I haven't seen a mentalist or a magician at a wedding before." So they do happen a lot, but surprisingly many weddings don't think about it. So I love doing them, and I'll do more. Because
No,
they're one of my favorite.
it's great. I've seen you at work, and we've worked together before and at a wedding. And you're so correct about the fact that it's such a beautifully receptive audience. Everyone's happy. They're dressed up well. They want to be entertained, which is, of course, as you said, some part of those universalities. But there's like a heightened sense of ready to hit me with your best shot kind of moment, that kind of attitude that people have, and it's magic, so to speak, to watch you take advantage of that in the best way possible to really allow for this signature moment in these two people's lives shine. I must ask you the question though. Obviously, I've seen you do your mind reading stuff in particular, and you classify it as one of your signature acts. How much of it is like science versus magic, so to speak?
Yeah, there's a great balance of illusion and psychology. So what I like to tell people, especially when I'm doing mind reading, some people will shout from the crowd, like, you're a psychic, or like, how long have you had this? How long have you known you've had this ability? And I always say to them, look, I'm not a psychic. I'm showing you things that may appear psychic. I'm giving you the illusion of mind reading. Now, some of the things that I do are very much science-based, psychology-based. I am looking for micro expressions on the face. I am reading body language. I am using language to and then pluck that thought from their mind as if they thought of it. So I might be feeding information to them and then telling them what it is, and they'll swear to you that they thought of it on their own. So the deception behind it is a magic trick, but it's so elegant and so finesse that it appears real. And so a lot of people have some people are even scared of mentalism because they're like, how did you get inside my head? But, the secret behind it all is really understanding people, using my language perfectly as best as I can, and an element of trickery and illusion that goes behind it. So I let the audience decide what they think it is.
No, absolutely, and that's definitely like part of the biggest part of the illusion. So it's truly fantastic to watch it in real time. And I've seen a lot of mentalists in my time when I particularly was working on cruise ships, and it's just whether good one, okay one, bad ones, there is still that level of wonder that people are hoping for to be able to try to figure out how he or she did it. And it's like, go and study how to do it. But it's amazing, and I love the illusion of it all. I love that there's this curtain of mystery that will always be held up between you and like what really goes behind the scenes. And speaking of sort of behind the scenes, I'm sure you've seen you've got lots of wild stories from stages. You've been on so many of them. What are some of the craziest reactions you've received, minus the ones you experienced in Finland? And can you sort of share when a moment perhaps like when a trick didn't go quite as planned?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So one reaction that I really love and remember, that I was surrounded by a group of guys, and I did something. I actually made his ring vanish and appear attached to my car keys. I think you might have seen that when you saw me performing one time.
I did.
And what I didn't expect was him and his two mates. They grabbed my shirt and started shaking me, but they weren't aggressive about it. They were just like, "How the did you do that?" And it was like, I was all on camera too. So, it's all good, like, that's great footage, but it's a reaction that went definitely over and above what I expected. Another one would have been where I had a guy be very confrontational in a performance, and I was doing roaming at the time. I wasn't actually on stage. I was in the audience, and he was trying to figure out how I did everything. He was like, "Oh, you did this, it went up your sleeve, it did this." And I don't mind if people do that. That's part of the, some people like to be the loud one, the center of attention. I can deal with that.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is make sure everyone in the audience has a good time. And I have to neutralize this. Otherwise, everyone misses out because of this person's, say, ego. So what I did was I gave him the pack of cards. I told him to take one out, sign it, and put it back in and mix it. I gave him the spotlight to do everything himself. And let's cut out a little bit of what happened next, because that might give away the secret.
Yeah,
the card had vanished from the packet in his hands, and it had ended up folded inside his cigarette packet in his pocket.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Now this is something I created on the spot because he was really messing with me. So, I'd pinched his cigarettes out of his pocket, and, XYZ, the card ends up inside the cigarette packet. The packet's back inside his pocket. And of course, nobody knew how it happened. And, everyone went wild. Like, I had the audience with me, and I assumed that this guy was going to be with me because, what a crazy cool trick that was. If I'd saw it, I would have been blown away.
Yeah.
And I don't know what kind of a person he was or why he was like this, but I think his ego didn't like it. I think he felt like he was being made a fool of, which is not my intention. Yeah. He picked up the knife from the table and said, "Tell me how you did it." Oh, and wow. I was like, "Dude, it's for your entertainment pleasure."
Yeah.
Of this was for you. I did that trick just for you, and nobody knows how it's done except me. So, you should take a bow to your friends. It's all good. And his friends kind of like chilled him out a little bit, and I walked away, and I'm like, "Stay away from that guy."
Yeah, wow.
I mean,
That's
this was at a
wild.
corporate event as well. I was surprised that he had that sort of
Oh,
attitude. He
gee.
must have had a bad day.
Oh, wow. But you know what? It does say something about and what people don't realize. Because, if you're not in the entertainment space, like, regardless of things that may appear obvious, such as, why people would react, like, for instance, if something as visceral as like a trick being done on their behalf and people thinking, oh, maybe I can understand where he come from. Even just something as benign as, like, in my world, where people think that they just need to have the microphone, there's always something that they have to say. And
Mm.
you are right. Like, I've experienced similar circumstances where, say, 2% of my audience over the course of time I've been performing will, instead of, like, you know not realizing that my heckle back to them or whatever has been a way of just saying, hey, calm down here, but we're all in good nature and all good fun here, has actually been taken really wrong. It is wild to people to think that there is a level of quote unquote danger to the job we do, because we're playing
All
with
right.
ego in the sense, which is like people's biggest fire that people have as a personal sort of identity. And but good on you for navigating that. And I think it's a real credit to you to show that a true performer like yourself has an improvisational ability and brilliance just to pull something out of a hat, so to speak, in a way that is both thematic to what you're trying to accomplish for the rest of the audience, but at the same time puts you completely on the side with the audience. And that's the biggest part. It's that when you have the audience on your hand, yeah, sorry, mate, you kind of lost there. Go home and think
Indeed.
about what you did.
Indeed. So the psychology and the hypnosis and the neurolinguistic programming, all of these language skills has helped me over
Mm,
the years. That circumstance doesn't happen. See, that happened quite some time ago.
yeah.
It may be so, and if I want to be honest about my transition from an amateur to a professional, it may
Yeah.
be so that I was creating some sort of arrogance around my performance.
Mm,
Maybe
mm.
my presentation looked like, ha ha, I got you. Maybe it was me,
Yeah.
and I'm willing to
Yeah.
see that. But
Mm,
now I don't actually have people respond like that. People know very quickly we're in this together. I don't have hecklers anymore. People don't
mm.
try to ruin my show anymore. People don't get angry anymore. People are just like mouths open and just like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And I think it's a credit to what I've learned and how to handle people, because I want them to have a good time. At the end of the day, regardless of why that person reacted like that, if I have any responsibility about changing his reaction,
Yeah.
I'll make that responsibility on myself, and I'll change my act to suit everyone if I can.
No, I can really appreciate that, and that's what screams professional experience and tenure in your sense. And I know a lot of couples who they'll ask me, for instance, I get the question all the time of, like, how do you heckle? How do you handle hecklers and people who are called maybe potentially causing drama or being drunk or so forth? And I say, well, look, I'm going to be honest with you, very similar to what you said. It's that there is a point now in my career where I know I just don't have that. That's not to say I'm arrogant, like unlike yourself. It's like we're not arrogant to think that it could never happen, but there is a point where we've reached a level of delivery where we're confident that this we don't even invite that kind of, it's just the atmosphere we're creating is this, like, sort of love potion-esque sort of environment where there would be the 1 in 1 millionth percentage, whereas before maybe it was the 1 in 1,000th percentage because of our lack of experience. And so it's a credit to what you do, and also gives that safety blanket of opportunity for couples thinking, oh, that may be fantastic, but what if the whole night devolves because someone got angry at the Magic, or I got their one cousin that just can't handle it, can't, doesn't even like losing in Mario Kart. How can he handle having the Magic about it? So, no, it's a real credit to you, and I think it shows the power of really getting professional people taking care of their day. I got one
One
more
of the
question.
things
I've got to wrap it
one of the
up.
things that I will do. Oh, sorry. One
Oh,
of the things
sorry,
that
no,
I will do.
please go for it.
One of the things that I will do. So, for example, I'll just set a scenario in a wedding.
Yeah.
In a wedding, so usually you've got the bridal table at the head of the room, and everyone's facing them, right?
Mm,
So when I put on a show, a lot of the times there's no stage. The stage is for the wedding couple, and
yeah.
so what I'll do is I'll liaise with the wait staff or the management, and I'll get them to put a row of chairs at the edge of the dance floor with the
Mm,
audience behind, and I'll
mm,
invite the entire the wedding party to come and
mhm,
sit in the front row to watch the show. I'll
mm.
never have the wedding party behind me. I've seen entertainers perform with the wedding party behind, which is kind of weird because it's their wedding and they're the last people to see the performance. So
Yeah, it's so true.
I'll put them right in front, and they'll be front and center, and I'll use them in my act. I might use the bride and the groom, or
Mhm,
the groomsmen, etc., for something. Make them the stars of the show. That's
mm,
part one. Part two, if there's someone in the crowd that decides they want to heckle, this is going back to what we said.
Yeah.
Instead of fighting that person and trying to beat him or her at their own game, I might think, they said something, it interrupted my show, but everyone laughed, and I'll recognize that. And instead of trying to resist them or reject them, I'll say,
Yeah.
actually, come and join me on the stage, and I'll bring them to the front. I was
Yeah.
like, well, if you and I are working on this together and it's us versus the room, you're not a heckler anymore. You're my partner in crime now.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes the hecklers are my favorite participants. And once they get off the stage, I've made them look really good. They're now my favorite audience member, and they make sure other people shut up.
Yep.
Just be surprised how we can twist it.
No, you are absolutely on the money. That is masterclass stuff. So anyone wanting to become a world-class performer that's listening, that is, I can tell you as a bona fide professional fact, that was masterclass stuff. No, that is great to see. And I know that, we never want to pull that kind of stuff out, but certainly if you can get people on your side, when you put in that position, that is just absolute gold. And it can transform a night from fantastic to absolutely incredibly stratospheric, just in the way that you were able to bring people together. Brother, I haven't got much time left. You and I, we could talk for hours, and I know we already have in the past. So what I'd like to do is ask you a couple key questions, and then we'll have people find out how they can get in touch with you. First off, why is it that you think magic, why is it that everyone loves magic so much? What does it boil down to?
There's something about magic that allows people to step away from their reality. Sometimes reality can be mundane. We have work, we have family life, we have commitments, we have obligations, but there's something about entertainment and specifically magic that brings the wonder back. It takes us back to a time before all of those heaviness came to us as adults. That moment between I understand everything to how the hell did that happen? This little moment, even if it's only 3 seconds, that's real. That's the magic. It's not what I did. What I did is the catalyst for this breath, this moment of not thinking about anything else. Just like I was on radio with Ben Fordham, and I read his mind. I guessed something that he was thinking of. It was a family member's name. And there was 2.5, maybe 3 seconds of stunned silence. That is it's a radio host, by the way.
I was going to say that the fact that you made Ben Fordham not say anything for 3 seconds is profound, given especially that it's a sin to go for silence for more than 2 seconds on radio. So you did a great job.
Yeah, exactly. So that 2 seconds, 2.5, whatever seconds it was, in that moment, he wasn't thinking, what am I going to do? What I have to do this as he is and as important as he is, had silence in his mind. And that is the magic that I'm creating for people. Moments of wonder.
I love it. Escapism is the real trick to it. I love that so much. Final question. What was the very first illusion you ever learned?
The very first illusion I ever learned. I was about 5 years old. My father owned an event center, a function center, and there was always weddings there and parties and events there. And I would be always, I'd go with him sometimes as a way of him babysitting me, and I'd attend all these random functions for people. And from time to time, there'd be a magician, and my father would always feed the entertainment. And so I would go and sit at the table where I knew the entertainers were going to sit, and I'd wait for the magician, and he sat there. And he taught me something that I still do to this day. Essentially, you take a coin, you put it on the table, and he puts his hand over it, and then it disappears, right? And he does this multiple times. It goes through the table. And then he covers it with a cup, and he covers the cup with a handkerchief, and he lifts up the cup. You can still see the coin, and he puts the cup back down. And then he told me to wave my hand over it, and then he grabbed my hand and slammed it down on the cup. And it vanished. The cup was gone, lifted the handkerchief, the coin was still there, but the cup had gone through the table. Now, that was the first illusion that I learned, and I was very, very young. It took me about 6 years before I could actually perform it as a person, but I still do it to this day, because that moment where the coin's supposed to vanish, but the entire glass vanishes, that still gets people. And I still do that at restaurants and family events and things like that. So yeah, one that I'll never forget.
I love that. You're going to have to show me that one the next time we
I'll
catch
show you
up
next
for
time.
sure. Brother, how can people find you? And also, how can people, perhaps even if they're curious about that Ben Fordham clip as well, how can they get in touch?
Excellent. So what you can do is you can go to www.xaviercrow.com. My name's on the screen. It's XAVIERCROW.com. You can also find me on Instagram at xavier.crow or on LinkedIn, which is Xavier Crow as well. So across the board, it's Xavier Crow. And if you go onto YouTube and just type in my name, you'll see a bunch of videos. One of the videos is Mentalist Stuns Ben Fordham into Silence. So you can go and check that out.
It's great. It's such a good clip. I highly recommend people go and check it out. And of course, I highly, highly recommend that people book you as well to bring that level of brilliance and difference to a wedding. I love when I hear couples just say, I've never seen that before. That is something new. And that is just, I know that becomes core memories for guests. So well on you for being a proponent of lasting memories and for being a master at your craft. I will hopefully see you around the traps very shortly. And thanks so much for sharing your insights today.
It was absolutely a pleasure. Thank you, Nathan. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Just As Planned Wedding Podcast. Please like and subscribe to let me know that you want more videos just like this one. And of course, please follow us on our socials at Just As Planned Wedding on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more expert insights to help your wedding go just as planned.